Good day to you. Welcome to today's Kingdom Conversation. So blessed to have this opportunity to come and speak life and instruction and inspiration to you today. Want to take some time to have a brief conversation with you about faith and technology, faith and the Gen Z generation or various generations, and to think about perspectives on faith today. It's quite interesting, I find, that as I visited family over this Thanksgiving Day holiday, they would just interact with various generations in my family from the age of 2 to 64 or 70, I think, from age 2 to 70. And it's interesting as we discuss various topics, some political, some spiritual, some just social, the different perspectives that each person has. And I find it quite fascinating and interesting and relevant for us to take time to listen to various perspectives. For our society today is much different than it was, say, 40 years ago. And for those who are 70 and up, the generations were different from the 40-year-old generation. And so we must continually allow our knowledge to evolve. To evolve, in some cases, adopt and adapt to the contemporary thinking of today in order to relate to people and find common ground instead of division. And this is also relevant in the realm of spiritual life or religion. In what we call the black community here, which there is not a cohesive black community, of course, but often people generalize people based on various things about their life, whether they're a college graduate or non-graduate, whether they're white-skinned or white-skinned or black-skinned. And so we must learn that no one identifies with another person solely because they have certain traits in common. You really relate to people who share common interests, common values, common world views. That is what usually connects people to one another, not so much the external things. And so I want you to examine within your circles of movement or influence on your job, at school, in the marketplace. It's not unusual, I can only speak from the American point of view as far as everyday living, and I can only relate to my worldview for living in America. For America is a very diverse and large geographic country with various regions who all have some things a little different than the other region. People who live in Southwest America, in the deserts of Arizona and Nevada, places like that, have a different view of society in general based on where their upbringing was than people who live in the South, say in Mississippi or Georgia or Alabama. It also varies from those who may live in the Northeast, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire, or Midwest. So there are various regions just in the United States. And if you expand that to regions around the world, you certainly would not be able to think that people will be able to identify with you based solely on external things. What I find from the perspective of many, for lack of better words, African Americans or Black Americans, various terms that people use to distinguish, to identify, or in some cases separate themselves from one another. Let's say a black person, as we call here in America, goes to Africa and they encounter what we call another black person. Now, of course, in many of the sub-Saharan Africa countries, the entire nation is ruled by dark-skinned people we would call blacks. But Africans don't see themselves as blacks. They see themselves as African. If they're in Kenya, they see themselves as Kenyan, or Uganda as Ugandan, and Tanzania as Tanzanians, and on and on and on. That's only an American type of thing where we see ourselves by the divisive terms that we have been conditioned to live by. So a dark-skinned person, or what we may consider a black person in Africa, cannot identify with a black person, talking skin tone, in America based solely on the fact that both have similar skin tone. There are different customs, there are different cultures, there are different worldviews, there's different educational systems. And these things will not cause any level of cohesion among you simply because your skin tone is the same. Same thing goes into the area of faith or religion. Every Christian in the world doesn't think like every other Christian. Every Muslim around the world doesn't think like every other Muslim, and on and on and on. And so sometimes as we grasp for knowledge and growth and understanding, we may find ourselves in somewhat of a conundrum, trying to understand it succinctly, to put it all into one easy little box where everyone completely understands every other person. That is near to impossible, for the reason that you, as old Indian proverb used to say, you can never understand a man unless you walk a mile in his moccasins or shoes. And so we must be able to relate to people from their perspective of life. And that may be difficult for most people, but we must try to understand their background, their history, their upbringing, their custom, their cultures, their worldviews. And this is whether it's political, spiritual, economic, financial, relational. It's going to be very difficult to understand people if we're only focused on helping them, trying to make them understand ourselves. There must be a two-way street in order to come to understanding, not just a one-way street of people understanding us, but we're taking no interest in understanding them. I find this to be a very key factor in causing people to stay in their various boxes. And don't get me wrong, the goal should not be to move everybody into one box. We should embrace and appreciate the diversity of people in this world based on skin color or group affiliation, faith, religion. We should learn how to appreciate one another. And that's how we come to a better place of understanding. This requires that we humble ourselves, really, to set aside our own agendas. May have to push the boundaries of our own traditions and customs and ways of doing things in order to relate to other people with the goal in mind of understanding them, not changing them, and not necessarily allowing them to change us, but just to understand how we can relate to each other better. That should be the end goal. It will be a very bland world if everybody talked alike, walked alike, thought alike, did everything alike. But God allowed the world to be created with great diversity and also great opportunities for growth and understanding in every area of life. So I challenge each and every person to allow your thinking to be expanded. Challenge what you think you know about another particular group of people. Quote unquote, in America, blacks. Challenge the way you may view white people. And I'm talking in a general sense, taking into account that every quote unquote white-skinned or light-skinned person is not the same as every other light-skinned or white-skinned. Same with every dark-skinned or black person in America, or Africa or any other nation or culture of this earth, if we're going to ascribe to be an example from those who believe in the name of the Lord Jesus, if we're going to be an example of a true follower of Christ, we must embrace others as Christ embraced others. Not to indoctrinate them with our thinking and not necessarily to have them indoctrinate us with theirs, but to gain an appreciation for the common things that we all share as humans and appreciate the various and varied customs and cultures that each people group have around the world. So I really want us to think about this beyond generations. Those who are 20-somethings now may not be able to relate to 40-somethings, and 40-somethings may not be able to relate to 20-somethings, and the 60-somethings may not be able to relate to the 40-something age groups I'm talking about. So there are so many areas for growth, so many opportunities for understanding to develop in our society. And I really want to challenge each and every one of you to allow yourselves to grow every day by allowing something new to be introduced to you. And then taking every opportunity to introduce something new about yourself. It's never a good thing to generalize people, to say all blacks are this, all white people are this, or all Jews are this, and all Christians are this, all Muslims are like this. That is very unhealthy, unproductive, and sometimes even dangerous to categorize people in such a way. We have a long history of the negative consequences in America and around the world when people view other people and characterize them as a group based on some preconceived, usually ill-conceived knowledge and understanding about various people's groups. So this is true even on a microscopic level or a macro level. So children of God, within your home, individual homes, understanding your children, understanding your mate, understanding your siblings, stepping into their world, allow their world to reshape or shape you or give you a different perspective on life outside of your own comfort zone or bubble. This will cause great growth and understanding to take place, and I think it will promote a better relations, interpersonal relationships among people's groups all around the world, particularly within what people call the church or the faith arena. So children of God, Selah, meditate upon these things. Put these things to the test in your own environment, within your home, on your job, within your local church, within your local communities, within your nation, your state, or your race groups or gender groups, even as it comes to people's sexual orientation and lifestyles and such. We must grow not to accept everything about people's lives, but we never reject people because we may reject some of their behaviors or actions. We must learn to distinguish between those things. And it is challenging, but it is quite possible to do so, because I believe that each and every one of us who have a brand new day have that day to be able to grow, to learn, and to better understand how to relate to one another as we relate to God, our worldview, and to society at large. So hopefully this will be some good food for your thoughts this week, and that it will challenge you to allow yourself to be expanded in areas that you have never allowed yourself to be expanded in before. God bless and prosper each of you today and every day.